right. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Day 2 after lunch, everyone's favorite time of the conference to listen to content. Thank you, Carmen, for being here. I know that this is a highly anticipated session for many people within the Stellar ecosystem. And I know this because I get the question about 10 times a week of what is happening with Stellar 8 Assist and what's next. So rather than me tell everybody for the 10th time that it's not our data, we can't share. The expert, the pioneer, not a title she asked for, but a title that she bears well, Carmen is here to tell us all about UNHCR broadly and the work that they do with Stellar in Ukraine and beyond. So thank you, Carmen, again for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Tori.
We will kick it off with just a general status update. The last time that we were here on this stage together, it was September 2022. Stellar 8 Assist had not launched yet, and since then, in just a year, we've had public announcements of launch, scaling across Ukraine, mentions of Latin America, processing for other UN agencies, and even more. So, share, how did you do it? How did that happen?
Yes, well, a lot of things have happened since we were at Meridian. So I think it seems that we work like in 9 months kind of period. So we basically initiated the initiative back in 2022, so I have to actually think even. 22, so even though we were thinking that things are going kind of slow, but actually they went quite fast. So we launched in December, our pilot in December, so it's in production now. And since we launched in December, we're obviously looking at scaling up. So again, we are 9 months later, and I think the good news is that we are scaling. So we are scaling in Ukraine. The solution is delivering to the internally displaced in Ukraine itself, but also in the meantime, we have basically onboarded another UN agency who would like to use this solution as well. So it's UNFPA, and their population they care for is gender-based violence. So I think we are basically using the solution in different contexts for different purposes. So whether it's multi-purpose cash, whether it's cash for rent, or whether it's cash for gender-based violence, for example. So it gives us opportunity to look at, obviously, follow the data, follow the money, making sure that we have the traceability and the reporting tools that we expect from such a solution. We just heard before, the speakers were saying they cannot afford to make mistakes in the bank. So, UNHCR, and I said that before, UNHCR is not in the business of 80%, we are in the business of 100%. So we need to make sure that the donor money that is destined to go for the people in need, the most vulnerable, that the money actually does arrive as and when, and obviously with the speed, with the transparency, and with the accountability and the reporting back to the donor. So we are looking now currently as well to scale up in other jurisdictions, like in Latin America. And our target is to have at least the throughput of $1 million through this solution in 23. So this is our target right now. But our focus is not so much on the numbers. What the focus is really that purposeful need assistance, aid assistance, so serves actually the people in need and gets to where it needs to get. And the reporting, the traceability is obviously ultra important. So to make sure that we have these assurances and also that we have an inclusion in the national ecosystems as well. So people have economic and financial inclusion. Yesterday we had a presentation on financial inclusion, so this is a big word out there. But if we do this right, and the technology obviously provides us these opportunities as well to get that initial payment, but from that initial payment, there is actually an opportunity to have the people in need being able to go about their livelihoods. That's one thing. And the other thing is also how the international organizations, the UN organizations, the NGOs can also fundraise. So that's very important to us. And the opportunity really presents itself here to have the rails with the blockchain technology that gives us the opportunity, the outbound rails, to actually connect them with the inbound rails. So if any of you here in the audience today would like to give $100 or more, that means we can really assure you that the $100 really go to the beneficiary. So I think that is really, if you like, the end purpose of this initiative. So we have the outbound rails, the payment with the technology stack on blockchain. So it's all good, more to come.
That's wonderful. It's great news overall. And for those who might be newer to the Stellar ecosystem and aren't aware of the background with UNHCR and Stellar Aid Assist, this is basically a way for humanitarian organizations to pay out to individuals in need. Much of that has shifted over the last 20 years to sending some form of cash, that could be digital or physical, instead of physical goods like blankets and food. And that's been proven more effective over time, but the payments part of that can still be tricky for vulnerable people around the world. And so what this allows people to do is receive money who are on the move. They might be going to another country. They can access MoneyGram's global cash out network with the Vibrant Assist app. And you're hearing Carmen talk about what in the tech world we would probably call product market fit, with things like people on the move and victims of gender-based violence that need discrete ways of receiving funds. So it's been really fascinating to see over the last year how, as the product has piloted and then started to scale, we find more and more of those use cases where this is an appropriate fit. We never want to force it on anyone, of course, but where it can be beneficial, it can be very, very helpful in that environment. I hope that's fair to say. So how did you, as UNHCR, become interested in blockchain and digital assets at the start, and what benefits have you seen from it so far?
Yeah. So the key is that the outbreak of the war in Ukraine gave us some reflection points. So currently, as you might know, there are 110 million people on the move. And UNHCR, obviously, that cannot take care of all the 110 million, but we have a lot of people on the move that require the aid. And for that, we need, obviously, systems, processes, and procedures that really can execute as and when the payments to the beneficiaries. And for that, you need technology and standardization, simplification, to make sure that we actually can deliver in that speed that is required at low cost. Obviously, we want to have maximum of donor funds going to the beneficiaries, and then actually the reporting. So this was quite a major reflection point, how to use technology. And we always have used technology, so it's not something new. But in this case here, how to use blockchain, and then the digital asset, the USDC, basically to have a stable coin, a store value or a safe value as well, to protect. So the idea is always to protect our beneficiaries from currency movements, and of course to be able to safeguard that money for what they need most. So I think in some ways, looking back, it was quite an easy decision in some ways. But I think it's like Franklin Templeton were saying, it's like to convince actually more internally why you would use such a technology, and what are the benefits. So I think to anyone on the cash teams of the UN organizations, we can agree today that this is the most speediest, the most cost-efficient, effective way to reach our beneficiary. There's no doubt about that. And you also have to keep in mind that we deliver aid assistance to about 10 million people per year. So these are not small amounts that we deliver. So last year we delivered close to 1 billion, just to give you an idea as well in monetary terms. And it translated to about 3 million transactions. So we are running quite a bit of a business here with so many transactions, and so many people actually depend on that lifeline. and for us to actually manage that in an efficient way.
That's wonderful. Shifting gears a bit, most people out here probably know that UN agencies do good things in the world, but they might not understand that the agencies work towards a set of objectives called the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. And it's basically a blueprint for a better future, an agreed upon set of goals that should achieve that over time. So how does blockchain fit into those metrics in the objectives that your agency sets out to achieve?
Yeah. So for those of you that are not familiar, so there are 17 SDGs, and last week actually, in New York there was the SDG Forum. So the key here is that we are fighting hunger, we are fighting poverty, also equality, so gender equality. The more money we get to our beneficiaries, and also the aspect of economic and financial inclusion. So it's not just financial inclusion, it's the economic inclusion, really provides new structures, stronger institutions as well. And I think one side which is very exciting is actually that people can go about their own lives, create their own businesses, and move forward. So we haven't talked about the ID, the transportable ID. Once they get funds from UNHCR, they establish a track record and then can use that going forward. So there are a few elements that we need to put together on the SDG side. The SDGs are not necessarily on track at this point, but they need acceleration. And we do believe that technology can make a huge difference in that, to make sure that we can reach these people that are in need. But what is really the key here is that we provide them opportunity for a life going forward and to be able to take care of themselves. So that's the ultimate goal.
Absolutely. On that theme, we often hear about ethical and responsible innovation. The UN agencies seem positioned well to actually achieve that. But what does that mean to you?
Yeah. So the UN has, of course, the highest values and principles against we deliver: human rights, sustainability, like SDGs, but also collaboration and coordination. So coordination and collaboration is really of the essence, because we cannot do these things ourselves. So public and private partnership are very important, that we get the best solutions out there and actually can work together. So that's where collaboration and coordination is really of the essence. And the network, so it goes down to the network. So we want everyone to have responsible delivery. So when we talk about human rights, we don't just talk human rights in particular countries. We're talking about equality across the network, and that you are delivering your technology solution also with the highest standards, with the highest values that we, the UN system, work against.
I know that this is probably not what most people expected to come here and hear about today, but I do want to tie it back to our theme of unlocking human potential for this year. And hopefully you can see how the missions of the UN agencies and SDF and the stellar ecosystem broadly tie together. But I just think it's such a great example of how we can take the private sector tech lens and marry that with something that UNHCR and others have been doing for well over 70 years. And so human rights, human potential, they go hand in hand. And I love that we get to work together on a daily and weekly basis to help achieve that in some very small way. But tying back to the stellar work, what's next? Again, the question that I get all of the time and can never answer.
Yeah, what's next? So we are still in this very responsible scaling up. So the key is that we haven't talked about regulatory compliance, but it's out there as well. So in every jurisdiction that we are going into, even though MoneyGram has the cash out off-ramps in that sense, but the UN, of course, works with governments, and we need to make sure that we work hand in hand with them. So we are not there to disrupt their own systems, their own economic and monetary policies, for that matter. So it's quite sensitive to what extent we can do in each and every jurisdiction. So, but we are in the business, so we are the data owners of these efforts. So we, in every jurisdiction, we work with the governments together, hand in hand, and we, most of the time, actually understand where the issues are. We talk to the central banks. We obviously explain ourselves, with which solutions we are coming in, and in a lot of countries, we actually influence the underlying economic viability to a great extent. So we are a responsible partner towards the governments. Some governments obviously are not necessarily in line with these values and principles. So we also have to deal in those countries. We obviously, we observe sanctions. We look at all sorts of compliance requirements that we also fulfill. So to us now, going forward, is to make this solution even more relevant in many more jurisdictions, and how we can access and also provide digital literacy and financial literacy to the beneficiaries, but to some extent also to our interlocutors at the governmental level, to make sure that we are all on one page here, what we are trying to do. So there's a lot of advocacy that still needs to be done, that people in government also can actually understand these solutions much better.
That's wonderful. And we definitely look forward to being your partner in that on the technical side, and happy for you to handle everything else, because that sounds a lot harder, changing people and educating people, than building tech, quite frankly. We only have a couple minutes left, so I'm thinking about the audience and who's here and some of the conversations that I've had over the past couple days. And so I want to ask, as a final question, what would you say to builders and companies, early stage startups in the audience that might want to work with the UNHCR or get into the UN system somehow? They've got something that they think could bring value, but it's a very daunting task. What do you recommend?
Well, what I recommend is obviously get in touch with us, number one. Number two is that we are interested in real solutions, so we are not an experimental stage, like many companies have, sort of a side where you experiment. But we are risk-taking in this way, so we want to understand what other technology you can offer, especially also in traceability, in ID as well. So digital IDs is dear to us. And obviously data protection, the data integrity. So there are many areas which come much before that when you do a payment. So we are discussing right now how you make a payment, but before you come to the payment, there are many other steps. So I think that the UN is open to new technology, and also to make sure that it is actually usable. So for you, the developers, you can put yourself in the shoes of a refugee and what we actually need to manage. So it's like it says, it's the real side of things, what we do. So stay on the ground, that these are solutions that are actually usable by the people that we care for.
Absolutely. Well, and Carmen and I joke a lot about using these products in the places where they're meant to be used, not necessarily the places where they were developed. So what I'm hearing is the UN is open. Make sure you actually use your products in the environments in which you intend them to be used, and have a special lens towards data security, data protection, and reliability. All right. Thank you so much, Carmen. We're going to transition the stage. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.